I remember coming to Huntington and with my mom, a visit, and we drove up and saw the ad building, and I have to confess, we laughed. We thought, well, maybe this isn't the place. But then, we went in and we visited the people. We got shown around by some folks, and we loved it. We loved the people. We were attracted by the people. And then I was recruited by the wrestling coach as well. So between an academic scholarship and a wrestling scholarship, we ended up at Huntington. One of the first persons I met was a guy by the name of Dan Kopp. Later became a pastor in the UB church, and we just hit it off. As I met people, I was reaffirmed in the fact that I liked it. Now, I wasn't a believer. I need to make that clear. I was not a believer. I didn't pretend to be a believer.
Yes, I had an interest in Mark, and he spoke my language. He took me out for food, which is right to my heart. And I got back to my dorm room after a few trips to the Big Boy for hot fudge ice cream cake. And I said, oh dear, I think he likes me. And I can't do this. And so I took opportunity to say to him, I really like you, but I've promised myself I would not date somebody who was not a believer, because I don't think I should be married to someone who's not going the same direction as me. And to my surprise, he looked at me and said, I respect you for that. But I knew, because it was a small campus, that everybody was talking to Mark about the Lord, and Mark was hunting and digging, and Dan Kopp was right there with him. And I don't know exactly when, things changed for him. But I do know at about 2 a.m. one night in April, Dan Kopp called me and said, "You did it. You did it." I go, woohoo, we can date.
Key factor in me coming to know the Lord was the fact that I really hadn't met, I found out later, I hadn't really met true Christians. I met a lot of people who said they were Christians, but I could tell by the way they lived their life that it really wasn't true. And so when I came to Huntington for the first time, I saw people who lived differently, and I could just tell they had a joy that was different.
Well, Mark became Student Senate President, I think the middle of our junior year, and I was a Student Senate Treasurer, so we were in leadership of the Student Senate. He much more than I was, obviously. But he was always including people and managing and leading in a way that people were attracted to. He wasn't seeking spotlight, but he was comfortable in it and using it to his advantage, to the advantage of the mission of the Student Senate and the college. So I think that's what helped him throughout his college career, especially the second half of it, and then probably throughout his professional career.
So it was then right at the tail end of my freshman year where I came to the point of I need to follow the Lord Jesus Christ. I need to commit to Him wholeheartedly, and word gets around real quick at Huntington again. So Charlene found out, and Dan, my roommate, let her know, I think probably that night. And we ended up connecting and dating.
What I've seen in their lives is a consistent commitment to getting things done for the Lord. They've honed their skills at Huntington, Charlene being a helper, Mark being a leader, not seeking out recognition, but seeking out the Lord's will. And when they work together, they really able to accomplish a lot. And they honed those skills, I could see, during their years at Huntington.
I can't emphasize enough the importance of the grounding that I had in the understanding that whatever you do it for God's glory. So whether I was working, whether I was at home, that was a passion of mine, to do whatever the Lord called me to do in whatever circumstance. We met lots of people who loved our Lord and were passionately pursuing him. And he introduced this element that I hadn't really been exposed to before called missions. And again, this missionary element just kept growing and growing. So we ended up going on short-term mission trips, and then we ultimately ended up leading missionary trips. And then we did get to the point, there was a couple in our church who were considering full-time missions in Ukraine, and they asked us to go along with them in their vision trip, right? Yeah, it'd be nice to have a second pair of eyes, kind of thing. So, sure, we'll go with you. We've been to Ukraine lots of times. We'll do it. So little did they know, we were actually thinking about, well, maybe that's what the Lord would have for us. If we were to go, what were we sensing God would have us to do? And so we talked about, He's not really calling us to a particular type of work, church planning or teaching or that kind of thing. And He also wasn't calling us to a particular people group. So we said, what drove our hearts was the missionaries themselves. We saw the lifestyle they lived, we saw the issues they had to struggle with, and we thought, we want to come alongside them. We want to find some way to do that.
Well, I was, and still am, totally impressed and amazed that Mark and Charlene answered that call, made what looks like huge sacrifices to many of us in packing up their belongings and their life here, saying goodbye to their children in a sense, and taking up that mission to bring their encouragement to foreign places far away.
So in practice of law and roughly 50 years of age. So again, I'm a partner, got associates doing the work for me, making good money, and my fellow partners can, hey, I respect you, Mark, but why in the world are you moving overseas? Why are you giving all of this up? And so I was able to share. The reason is Jesus Christ.
It became pretty hard to say goodbye to them when they finally did go, but we knew they were completely called. I think about this. I helped them with their garage sale when they sold everything, every single thing that they owned, except maybe 10 Rubbermaid tubs is all they had. And they had a 3-story home. And, I watched them get rid of things that were precious to them and give them away. And that really made an impression on me. And so Tom and I, even more, wanted to support them and love them. And they're awesome people.
So we packed up our bags and went with a mid-sized mission agency and moved to Ukraine, of all places. We weren't really picking that because of our prior experience. The Lord just allowed that to happen. So we were in Ukraine for about a year and a half, and then we moved to Siberia. And yes, it is stinking cold there. Minus 40 for a high, anyway, not my idea of fun. And then we moved to Kazakhstan, which was warmer. It was about minus 30 on an average day in the winter in Kazakhstan. And so we did member care through on a full-time basis then. So we're finishing up our 4th year, again, a year and a half roughly in Ukraine, and a year in Siberia, and a year and a half in Kazakhstan. By then, it was time to come back on home leave, and also Charlene, and she's honest about this and open about this, was burned out. And so she came home actually a little earlier than I did, and we came back and got professional help.
The truth is I burned out overseas. I didn't do well living in 3 countries in 4 years in 12 different apartments. That was a little too much for Charlene. And I didn't realize, which has benefited me later, that I now know the road of burnout and how to come back, and I can help more people.
So what would I do? So I went back to the international director of the mission agency and said, hey Warren, what do I do? You have some ideas? I'm not sure what to do. I don't feel that the Lord is leading me back to the law practice. I feel like I should still be involved in missions in some way. So you got any ideas? He said, well, actually, I do have an idea. He said, remember that whole business's mission thing? You had been to a meeting 2 years ago. I said, oh, yeah, now that you say that, I do remember. He said it's just died. We had a committee and they met, and death by committee, right? And so we came up with this white paper, and there it sat. So it's in my little binder. I've got this whole thing that we came up with, this whole business missions. So would you be willing to take charge of that? Would you be willing to see if that's a go? And the business's mission is the idea of instead of going as a full-time missionary, you're going to go into the unreached community and launch a business and be missional in that business and in that community. And so MDE was launched with the understanding that we were going to create a service organization that provided services to these folks.
Mark and Charlene have always been very intentional. Mark is an attorney. Charlene has admin skills, and she paints and she builds. And always I have known them to be available where they are needed. MDE serves people from all over the world, going all over the world. So absolutely, not just Americans who are leaving America and go to other lands, people from any number of places traveling across the world. Wherever God calls one, MDE is available to support that.
Huntington University has a clear statement that they want their students to impact the world for Christ. And that desire is certainly powerfully fulfilled in Mark and Charlene Canada, as they, as Huntington grads, have truly impacted the world for Christ from the get-go, as they served in a local church that was passionate about missions, and then as they were sent out by that local church, and expanded from there as the Lord worked in their lives and hearts and as opportunities arose. So I can't think of anyone that better fits that mission of Huntington University than what Mark and Charlene Canada have done.